Well, what we learned this week is that there is a brand new Constructors, and that if anyone listens to this podcast for more than 20 seconds, they're a stupid idiot. That's basically it, right?
I agree. Moving on.
Welcome to the Blatantly Biased Racing Podcast, where we're going to talk about stupid things and stupid people. How are you,
idiots?
How are you today, man?
I'm good. How are you, man? Season's
Good,
over.
good.
By the way,
I know.
24 races. We made it. Made it.
Alpine, maybe.
Oh, God.
P6. Yeah.
Fuck them.
Yeah. I only bring this Alpine hat out when we're going to complain about Alpine.
I mean, it won't be for long. I mean, they'll be called high tech, low tech, or which medium tech, whatever tech it is.
This hat's probably worth about as much as the team at the minute anyway. So
yeah, probably worth more.
Probably. Yeah.
Anyways, so talking about stupid idiots. What
Good
the fuck
segue.
was Max doing? Honestly, let's talk about it. Let's talk about the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix, and I think again, there are a lot of things that we should talk about. We'll also talk about the the kind of whining and bitching both Max and George did. We'll get to that.
Oh my God,
we'll get to that. Stay tuned, by the way, guys. We'll get to that. But first, let's talk about his remarks for the stewards.
Yeah. Which Brundle wasn't happy about.
What? Yeah. What's your view on the penalty, by the way?
I think it was a fair penalty. I think the thing is, there's a couple of sides to it. First of all, I know a lot of people have been complaining about like lap 1, turn 1 penalty, out of order, that kind of thing. The problem is that generally lap 1, turn 1 is penalised for certain instances. So it's not like it's never penalised. What people are confusing is normally there is some leeway. So a racing incident is 50-50. No one is really to blame. And lap 1, turn 1, a racing incident of like 60-40 or 70-30. Sometimes they say, right, well, I mean, it was more him at fault, but, you know, it's kind of in that chaos at the start. However, usually when it is just a one-sided 100% his fault, it is still penalised regardless of lap 1, turn 1. Otherwise, you just get a situation where you'll get Valtteri Bottas Hungary bowling every weekend and there's no penalties given out. So there has always been lap 1, turn 1 penalties. It's just more lenient. In this case, it was just Max's fault. Even Max after the race apologised and admitted that it was his fault. So I know there's a lot of people complaining about that. You know what? Once again, though, the FIA has done to themselves. They didn't penalise Hulkenberg last week, which made everyone have a reasonable complaint about the FIA once again, which is fair.
Last week.
Remember, Hulkenberg punted off two drivers.
No, but that was a racing incident, right? They termed it a racing incident.
Sort of, yeah.
It was as well. I mean, his rear...
He lost control.
It was not in his...
Yeah.
No, he was... I think the front of Alpine hit his rear. And he was not in the, what should we call it? The vision.
The thing is, a lot of people are using that as an example, right? I think you're probably right.
They're fucking dumb.
You're probably right that it was more of a racing incident, but I think by not even really investigating it, it does make it look bad. If you know what I mean. I think it leaves a poor taste for the FIA.
No, you're just being a Verstappen fan.
Right,
no.
Of course. Yeah. Now, as for the penalty, absolutely deserved. And for 10 seconds, I don't know why Verstappen and Verstappen fans are complaining about this 10-second thing, because literally at the start of the season, all the drivers agreed that it would no longer be a 5-second and it would be basically 10 seconds is the default. That has been the thing all season. And what's happened is we've had a mitigating circumstance that went in Max's favour at Austin, and they're using that now as like the thing to say, oh, it should be 5 seconds. The other thing is the drivers all asked for this pre-Qatar for harsher penalties, and then after Qatar, once again, they asked for harsher penalties. So they've all of the drivers, I think bar one, which everyone is assuming is Max, have pushed. I don't know if it is. It probably
he said
isn't.
He's not. He said he wasn't the one.
Yeah, so it probably isn't. And to be fair, if it was Max, he would just say it was him. So it probably isn't then. So if Max says something, I tend to agree that is exactly what Max did or how he feels. Because to be fair to Max, he doesn't really bullshit like some of the other drivers does. He does tend to just say what he's thinking. But yeah, the drivers all agreed on these harsher penalties. So I don't know. Fans being fans as always, when something doesn't go their way, it's a travesty, corruption and bias. And when it does go their way, it's just rules being perfectly implemented.
Yeah.
Max deserved a penalty there, though. You cannot just throw your car up the inside like that when there's no room and you're not entitled to it and think you'll get away with it. So, penalty deserved.
What about the conspiracy theory that he did it because he was trying to favor McLaren, favor Ferrari in some way?
Nah, I don't think he's thinking like that. I think Max just goes for it when he goes for it. That's just who he is. You know what the thing is as well? I will say one thing, which is
I was even hesitating asking that question because there's no.
You know what the answer is going to be. Yeah.
By the way, the Ted Kravitz actually suggested that.
Oh, lovely! Of course he did.
And you expected him to suggest that. Out of all people, if I just said that there is an F1 pundit who actually suggested something like this, the first name that would come to your mind is going to be Ted Kravitz.
Of course, yeah.
And there's this GIF that goes on. That's why they hate you.
Yeah.
Perfect. That's why they hate you.
Yeah.
That's why they say British bias, because you cannot stop doing these kind of things.
This is the thing, like Brundle.
Utter lunacy.
I think the thing is, there's Verstappen fans that are annoyed at Brundle after the comments this weekend, but there's also the thing that I like about Brundle.
Which comments?
He basically went on a rant saying what was Max doing there, like that move was never on, and he was like, the way he's reacting, and then when he said 20 seconds, stupid idiots or whatever, Brundle said you can't talk about the referees that way, like that's not a champion mentality, he went on this rant. The reason I like the way Brundle talks is because constantly, essentially all fan bases are angry at Brundle, which tells me that Brundle is basically saying what he thinks and talking the truth and not talking biased. Because I've seen Hamilton fans annoyed at Brundle, I've seen George fans annoyed at Brundle, I've seen Max fans annoyed at Brundle, I've seen Perez fans. Yeah, there's like 5 or 6 of them. I think they have a group. Yeah. But yeah, look, I think Brundle was right. Like
the two of them that are on this pod.
Yeah. But yeah, so Max, I don't know. I do think Max probably needs to. He won't, but I think maybe for next season, I this is going to piss off Verstappen fans.
Wait. Let's not jump to that. I think first of all,
yeah. What did you think of the penalty? Sorry.
Yeah. So, the first thing was, I think there was one thing very clear. Max was just going for it. Mm-hmm. He didn't. He everything was sealed. The championship is done, and he doesn't really give a fuck.
Yep.
There was pace that he could have maybe managed the race and won even. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't be surprised if he would have done that. Because the thing is, if he jumped Oscar at that point, he had the straight line speed to jump the McLaren at the long straights. He had that. Mm-hmm. It didn't pay off and then, okay, fine. It didn't work out. All right. It's just I think even Michael had that, and I think David Coulthard has actually talked about it, that you can show him, you can give him reason that XYZ things have happened, and this is the conclusion, and the conclusion is that you're wrong.
Yeah.
And he'll just turn around and say, no, I'm not.
Mm-hmm.
And I see those traits with Max as well.
And we both love those traits. We've talked about this. Yeah.
I mean, when he said stupid idiots, first I chuckled, but first of all, I'm very, very, very happy that FIA didn't do the FIA thing where they already have given him a community service. If this started again, saying that you should not be abusing the stewards or stuff like that, you should not be disrespecting them. Look, if that is something, then you should not put the mics on their faces while they're driving at 300 km per hour. Honestly, they should not have that. I honestly think after the race, if he was honest, he would have said that, okay, that was a mistake from my side. He wasn't, and he said that I don't know how the rules work, why I'm penalized by this much and stuff like this. He's being a bit disingenuous because he will never admit his mistake. No,
and he knows he was at fault because he apologized. Yeah. He apologized to Piastri, so he knows he's at fault. Otherwise, he wouldn't apologize to Piastri. He would.
Exactly.
Yeah.
8 penalty points. Going into a new season, a season where it's going to be tight.
Yeah.
And a season where, again, the kind of antics he pulled in Mexico and stuff like that, if he wants to pull those, you need some in the bank.
See, yeah. Sorry, go ahead. Yeah.
I mean, you can't do something like that. You really cannot put yourself at a disadvantage going into a new season. And again, Max has shown that he's still capable of those hot-headed moments that can harm him in the long run. I mean, he learns from it and bounces back.
Yeah.
But going into a season with 8 penalty points, and the first one that will expire, it will be in October.
Yeah.
So there's a 10-month period.
It's the whole season.
That's counterproductive. You should not. You have to keep this in mind, because look, precedence has already been set. Magnussen has been penalized. So really, there's no way out. It doesn't make sense.
Yeah, I think like this is the downside, isn't it? To the one thing that Max has for him that we've been so impressed by and said is like Schumacher-esque, is that he just maximizes every single weekend and he doesn't care. Like, he shows up every weekend. He never has an off weekend. That's just not who he is. And like that lunge on Piastri, I don't think there's anyone who's like, oh well, it's because of McLaren. It's like, no, like that's just who Max is.
He wanted to win. He knew that was his opportunity, and I would not have been surprised if he got the jump on Norris as well. He would have managed the race from there.
Yeah.
I mean, we saw even Gasly keep George behind for a long time.
Yep. So he could have won. So he was just going for it. But there's the downside to that attitude, which is where Lewis Hamilton has shone for a long time, which is Hamilton thought about an entire season, so he would think that way. Max doesn't. And this is the downside to that, which is if you're just focused on one race weekend, then things like the penalty points you don't worry about. You're just focused on your race weekend. And as you said, like, if he gets a race ban next year, which they'll have no excuse not to give now, as you said, because they otherwise, what is it?
Kevin Magnussen has been given already, and you have set the precedent.
So that's going to be that now. I don't know. The thing I was going to say about 2025 as well that he needs to be careful of is he has made it very clear that he's just going to put his car where he sees a space and he's going to go for it, right? And he's made this clear for a long time now, but he's continuing to do it. He hasn't changed this style, and nor will he, I don't think. He definitely don't. Actually, he won't. Put it up the inside and not think about, okay, I could back off here, take him on the straight, continue on. He just saw the gap and he went for it, right? Which is great. Love that about Max. But what he needs to be careful of is the conversation was, did Piastri see him? I think the conversation is, does Piastri... That should
not even be a conversation.
No, but the conversation should be, does Piastri care? Because in reality, what I've seen from Piastri this season is, even if Piastri saw him, Piastri, like Max, is the type of driver to go, well, I don't care. I don't owe you any space, so I'm going to continue to go. And if we crash, we crash. Leclerc and I think Verstappen going forward will drive a little bit differently now with Piastri because of that. He'll know that going forward. And anyone who doesn't think so, look at how he drives with Leclerc compared to how he drives with Norris, for example. So Max does think about these things, right? So I think he'll calculate that with Piastri. The reason I say it could be an issue for him is I think Norris after this season will be a little bit less willing to give any room because he knows that's what lost him. And people can bash Norris as much as they want. I've seen a Norris who does learn from his mistakes this year, who has gotten better. And I think over the off-season, he will think to himself, I'm not letting him get in my head at all. So if at the opening race we are lined up together and he wants to force me off track, he can force me off track and be penalised for it. I think that's how it's going to be. And then you've got George Russell, who's not going to give him room anymore at all. Like, we'll talk about that later.
He never does.
Wouldn't have, but, he's been at the disadvantage of not having a car to race. Whereas, like, look at George's race starts in the past. Like, look at Spain, was it earlier this year or last year? No, 2022, this year as well. Like, George in Brazil. George gets really good starts. He's really aggressive. My whole point in this is the pool of drivers who are willing to allow Max to push them is really becoming quite small. And at the front, it's basically non-existent for 2025. And that has been fine for him or for Verstappen over the last 2 seasons or so, because he's always had the advantage of the faster car, or at this season, for example, a big advantage where if there's a crash, it favors him anyway. Yeah. That's not going to exist in 2025. And I think he may need to kind of reassess the way he's going about it, because not only is he going to have a situation where the other drivers could be in cars just as quick as his from the start, he also has a penalty point disadvantage. and the other drivers are probably not going to play his game anymore, which means if he tries these things, he's going to end up with penalty points, crashes. It's going to add up quickly, and that could lose him a title next year.
It's all going to add up. I think the biggest problem is 8 points mean one collision similar to what Bottas had with Magnussen. You get 3 points. Then you're just that 1 point can be a simple VSC infringement.
Yep.
It won't be anything big, and you'll be gone. And VSC infringement was something that he had, and it wasn't what it was 0.02 kilometers per hour that he was quicker or slow or something.
Yep.
That's not much, but the margins are so small. And what he's done is he's put himself on the back foot in a season where he wants. Ideally, he would have to replicate what he did this year, and hope that Red Bull continues to stay on the path, because only then he'll win the title.
Well, I mean, look, even if we're talking about a situation where he does everything else perfectly, right? If he continues to drive like that, what's going to happen is it looks very, very likely that we could have 4 teams that have similarly paced cars, because the only team of that top 4 that I'm skeptical of at the moment of not having a car that will be on the pace is Mercedes. So it's either 3 or 4 teams are going to be fighting each other. And Max is also at another disadvantage, which is McLaren didn't have a single DNF this year, right? Which means the Mercedes, and I don't think they took an engine penalty at all this year, right? So you're talking about a Mercedes engine that is bulletproof. So if imagine next year he's in a really tight title fight.
Mercedes did not take a engine penalty.
No, the only reason they had problems with engines was because a couple of crashes. That's it.
Yeah.
So the thing is, if you go into next year where you've got George Russell, Lando Norris, who I don't care what anyone says, has gotten much better and was already a very fast driver, right? You've got McLaren, who's learned from their mistakes, and you've got a Ferrari who's on pace with possibly the best driver lineup on the grid next year, right?
Of the history.
Yeah.
One of the greatest lineups in F1 history.
Especially if they get the best side of Hamilton, right?
Yeah.
So you've got all this. Max could very much, and we've talked about this, still win in that situation, even if he's in the third fastest car, because one, Max will get priority and Red Bull will happily throw the Constructors title away to help Max win, right? That's who they are. 2, Max is probably the best driver on the grid at the minute anyway. And
Red Bull as well,
and
honestly.
Red Bull
Red Bull's ability to be consistently extracting everything, every race weekend, making the least mistakes, winning the crunch moments. Only Red Bull has shown the ability to do that every time.
And the problem with that is, even if they have the third fastest car, they could very much be in a fight, but it could be a very, very, very close fight. And he could be throwing away 25 points, at some weekend.
Yeah.
Just for a silly move of not sitting back, calculating and saying, right, I'll get him at the next turn, So he needs to be careful. He needs to be really careful.
Ideally, I think we'd back him to do that, back him to be more calculated. And he's shown that he can be.
He can do it.
I mean, the last 2-3 years, he's shown that. It's just that when he wants to bring out that side that was there in Austin or in Austria to an extent or in Mexico, now that would be limited. Now he cannot do something on those lines because, look, these points are going to play they're going to weigh on him. I mean, he can be he was questioned about it in the media and he said, fine, I'll take a paternity leave or something.
Yeah.
By the way, congratulations to him.
Yeah.
Yeah. You can talk about it right now, but once the season starts, once the ball starts rolling, you just cannot do that. You cannot afford any single mistake.
Max is very calculated. He's very clever. And I praised him because the Max of 2022 was very different even from the Max of 2021. He does learn, he has grown, he has become a better driver. However, we have seen that when the pressure piles on, Max can let his anger just get the better of him. And I just think, maybe we're wrong. Maybe in 2025 we'll show up and it will be a straight McLaren versus Red Bull fight, for example. And they'll have equal cars. And to be honest, in that situation, even if Norris drove as best as possible, I would expect that Red Bull will get the strategy right more often than McLaren will. So even if we took the drivers out of it for a minute, Red Bull wins that just because they'll be better in terms of strategy. But we could have an easy situation where you've got Ferrari, you've got McLaren, you've got Red Bull, and you've got Mercedes. And then it's all going to be down to who is maximizing the points the most.
Yeah.
And if he gets a race ban for a bit of anger one weekend,
Yeah.
that's it. Like, that could be the title over
And
because
that's
of
on
that
him.
one decision.
Honestly, that's on him. And
So-
exactly. And just to sum it up, he's kind of put himself on the back foot with that. You want to have a buffer of like 6 points. I think Lando is at zero penalty points right now. And
Because he's British, obviously. Yeah.
yeah, that has to be it. I think it's just that why make your own life difficult? That's the whole
Yeah.
point behind it. And again, you're going to continue to question the integrity of the stewards every time. You're going to be abusive and disrespectful. You're going to, at some point, they're going to bite back.
Look,
The
the thing
marginal
is,
cases are going to go against you because you've
Yeah.
been very disrespectful, and he has been. Honestly, he has been.
look. At the end of the day, the thing is, if he does something that deserves a penalty, the stewards have a list of options in those penalties. And if he's coming in every single weekend and going, these guys are idiots, they only penalise me, then eventually the stewards are going to go, just give them the maximum penalty. Like, you
Yeah.
know, because, like, if you're just going to be...
It's
if you're
basically
going to
fuck around and find out kind of thing.
The thing is,
right?
if you're a steward and you're actually making decent decisions, but you're getting called biased by this, like, not by fans, but by an actual driver every
Yeah.
weekend, of course, eventually you are going to just become biased because you're like, well, fuck it. They're calling us biased anyway, so might as well just give them the full penalty.
Yeah.
You know, like, and it's like there'd be nothing you can do because it's like the regulations say I can give you this, or this penalty. I gave you the harshest one. Why? That's my decision. You know, and there's nothing you can do about that.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
you know.
And at the end of and they're doing this job voluntarily.
Yeah.
It's not like they're being paid the big bucks. They're
No.
nothing. They're getting a pittance. They're basically getting the flight and very, very minimal wages. So
we've talked about this. Like the thing is, if there's actual bias, fine. But I think we talked about, like, in Mexico, everyone was calling Johnny Herbert out for a bias, and I'm like, neither of us like Johnny Herbert. We think we made that very, very clear. But it's also like, no, this is just the rules were applied as the rules were set out in Austin. And we called it. We were like, this is going to come back on you if you don't fight against these rules. And it did. And everyone's like, oh, it's
Within a week.
bias. Yeah.
I mean,
it's
that period, that 1 week period is so hilarious for me. I mean,
yeah. Really funny.
it will always be, I mean, always come back to it because we shouted like anything that these rules are stupid. No one agreed. Within a week, Karma came back to bite. But
Yeah, and then instead of accepting that, it was like, oh, why was it 5 seconds last week and 10 seconds? It's just like, oh, just shut up now. Go away. Anyway, let's move on.
By the way, talking about anger issues, Max Verstappen versus George Russell. What the fuck happened between
Oh,
these
so we're
two
talking
guys?
about that now. Okay.
Yeah. So, I mean, just in case if anyone has not followed it and everything. So what happened was in Qatar, Max was penalized 1 place and I think 1 penalty point was off. No penalty points, only 1 place.
No.
He was given in Qatar, and it was given because he impeded. No, sorry, it was given because he was driving unnecessarily slowly.
Not impeding.
And
let's just be very clear about that. Though we did talk about the penalty, so let's not go into it at length. Let's just talk about it.
exactly. Basically, unnecessarily slowly is why he was given the penalty. Now, what happened was once the race was done, Max completely unloaded on George. Had a ton of things to
Max
say.
put his Yos mask on and went.
Yeah.
went on,
the Yos gene spoke at that point in time. So what he said was that something on the lines of George going into the steward room and being a completely different person, demanding a penalty, going out of his way, lying, basically called him a double-faced person.
A two-faced.
And once, two-faced. So once that was done, George didn't get the chance to speak. On Thursday, he did. And boy, did he speak. And it was hilarious because I was getting pretty much what happened was, so one of our journalists is there. And what she did was she just opened the, what should we call it? She called me and she just kept the phone there and she said, just listen.
Yeah.
And I was hearing her and I couldn't stop laughing. Because what had happened was this was the third or fourth scrum that George had done. The first was with F1 TV and others. Second was with Sky. And I think this was the third one where the written media was there. And everyone knew, they expected what's going to come, and George just went into him. And he called him everything in the book. He called him a bully. He said that he cannot handle adversity. he claimed that around a quarter of Red Bull's employees wanted to just leave Milton Keynes because of the kind of abuse he was throwing around after Hungary.
Yeah.
And I don't know what else. I mean, a lot of things. So once that happened, you had Max, which I didn't like the way he actually, honestly, I didn't like the way he approached it, because the English speaking media, they went to him to have, I mean, he should have a right to reply, right? And he just shunned them off. He went to the Dutch media, Telegraph, his favorite. And there he basically, I think he said that, I don't even remember what he called George. He called him a bully as well, and he said I don't remember what particular word he used
just
for
the
it.
kind of two-faced stuff again, and
Yeah,
like, you
something
know,
on those lines, and backstabber. He's
That's
a
it, yeah,
backstabber. So
Yeah.
and once all this was said, it's like, and then again, the whole dinner happened, and George did not sit with Max. Apparently, the
Yeah,
assholes.
yeah.
That was funny actually. And apparently, Lando was one who arranged that. He kept the both seats together. No
Oh.
driver sat next to George, and no driver sat next to Max, and George came late. And when
Yeah.
George came, there was only he said, you can come sit here. He picked up his seat and went and sat with Lewis. So all that happened, and I think they all probably buried the hatchet with the GDPA meeting. But once all
now.
was done, it's a bit like, what was the point of it? For me, the biggest question, what was the point of the whole thing if you are going to basically bury everything within a day? So,
Well,
yeah.
I reckon it wouldn't surprise me if Max, or if George was talking specifically about the thing where he said, like, he said, if I see you in turn one, I'm going to put you on your fucking head, right? And
Oh, yeah,
George
yeah.
George was pushing that line quite a lot. And if I'm honest, like, just knowing things Max has said, that does sound like a Max thing to say.
I mean, I showed you, right? Remember I showed you the screenshot of
Yeah.
the Netflix guys actually. Yeah, he said that.
Okay, right. So they have the recording of it. Yeah. So it's
It's
like,
going to be played on Netflix. So, and
Yeah.
that's how it came out. But I mean, when the wording that George has said and what the Netflix guys said, it's a bit different. Not exactly the same one.
but kind of same
Con-
idea.
Yeah, it's the same idea. Appa- Max has denied it and everything. But again, I don't really. Again, a lot of fans were upset that how can he say something like this? In anger, the
Heat of the
driver says a
moment.
lot of things.
The other thing is, no one's in the stewards room, and like when Red Bull were saying that George was pushing really hard in the stewards room, I also absolutely believe that, because like George is that type of guy.
Why wouldn't he?
George
Why
will
wouldn't he?
play every angle to get. This is the thing. We've said it a lot this year. George is absolutely one of the most underrated drivers on the grid, and I really want him to have a car to fight Max, because all
Yeah.
the dirty games that Max wants to play that people talk about, like, they're not even really dirty games. He's just an aggressive driver on track,
Yeah.
and he takes every advantage, and he's watching everything.
Look, the
George
thing
is
he operates on the
absolutely
gray
that guy.
areas. He
Yeah, and
operates in
George
the
is
gray
absolutely
areas.
that
That's
guy.
how it should be. Yeah.
Yeah, George will absolutely play him at that game. So I am really looking forward to it. I really hope Mercedes give George a car, because it will be brilliant. But yeah, George in the stewards room reportedly went a bit overboard. But you know what?
So what?
That's the game. That's the game you're playing. Like, look at the perfect example again. Verstappen on the radio, like 20 laps later, what's going on with Lando's yellow flag penalty? Like, that's the type of game these guys are playing. They're looking for every single little advantage. George saw a sniff at a pole position and he went for it. He took it.
Yeah.
And you know what? It worked. So he's not going to stop doing it. Like,
Why should he?
no, he shouldn't.
A lot of people got upset when I said that almost every driver would do it. And they're like, Alonso said that he would not. I said, no, he did not. He was joking and he's basically stirring shit up. I'm like, if you are
Alonso.
making this claim about Alonso of all people, you don't know fucking thing about Formula 1. You really don't know.
Alonso. Come on, people.
I mean, he would ask for a penalty if Max sneezed the wrong way.
Yeah.
He will take every fucking advantage
If
that is
Max
possible.
Verstappen said to him, if I see you in turn one, I'll put you on your fucking head. I guarantee you, Alonso would be the type of guy to come close to him, run wide, and then over the radio, like, oh, he's aggressively coming for me. You heard what he said. You have the recording. Report it to the FIA. Like, Alonso plays every game under the sun. That's who he is. Like,
look, once that comment was made, Alonso would have gone to the media with that comment. And he would have actually had Max sanctioned. Yeah, he would have done that.
He would have been pushing
does not leave an inch. If Alonso is fighting for the title and Max comes up and says something on these lines, he's going to take advantage of it. And
look, fans just are ridiculous, because these are the same fans as well, let's be honest here, that just have all season said that Lando Norris doesn't have what it takes, he's not ruthless enough. And then when another driver is absolutely ruthless, you're like, that guy's over the top, why is he so ruthless? You know, and it's like, just... these fans are always going to be like this.
It still cracks me up when they say that Lando doing dive bombs into a corner was over the limit.
Anyways. And now when Max does it, it's lap one, turn one. What's going on here? Like, you know, what do you mean? It's these. Look, these fans are morons. I'm sorry to say it.
Yeah.
There we are. Subscribe. But yeah, I really, really hope George and Max get a thing next year. It'll be fun. By the way, there's some background noise. Has your air conditioning or something come on, or is that?
Is it so loud?
Yeah, it's cool. Wow. Don't worry about it. I think the noise cancellation will take it out in post, hopefully.
Yeah.
I'm guessing it's.
It is. Anyway. It is. I just switched it on.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Right. Yeah. It's cool.
It's weird. I mean, it's December and I'm using an air conditioner.
It's the same here. It's the same here in Mexico.
Global fucking warming, not warning.
I love global warming. Hopefully, it gets rid of a lot of people soon. Right. George and Max. I think hopefully next year we see a big fight between the two of them, because it will be.
Yeah. One thing on that. Do you think George prepared the whole speech?
Yeah, definitely.
I don't think so.
I think he may have done some of it on the fly, but I think he knew what he was going to say. You know. But that's who George is. He's prepared. You know.
Yeah. You gave him 4 days to prepare.
Also exactly. Yeah.
And he came back. I didn't understand what the fuck Toto was doing, because
enjoying every moment.
While I was hearing, all of a sudden Toto's deep voice comes. Where did he come from? And what happened was, apparently he was sitting next to George. He didn't really want to intervene. But then the question of Christian Horner was put up, where Christian said that something on the line of George being hysterical in the steward room. And then Toto jumps in, because again, he loves Christian, right? And then it's there that the whole little terrier comment came up. So, and one thing which was very hilarious, by the way, he's actually come in and said that the abuses and something, they need to be penalized more. And he specifically mentioned Max. Apparently the deal is gone, right? The bridges are burned now.
This as soon as those guys are fighting on track again, this was always going to happen, you know.
I thought Toto would play the long game this time around. That he would probably not I didn't expect him to intervene where Max was involved, and apparently that's why we saw Jos Verstappen talking to Susie Wolf afterwards. I mean, what other reason could be there? Then I don't even want to get into that.
I think the simple thing is, as soon as Max is no longer coming to the team, he doesn't care anymore. The only reason to stay silent is because he's hoping to get Max to the team, because that would be the ultimate win. But once that's over, it's like, right, well, we're back to this. I think, look, the thing is, in fairness to Wolf, same as Horner, they back up their drivers quite a bit, which is why Hamilton fans have really pissed me off this season with their whole, Mercedes never does anything. Shut the fuck up. But yeah, Wolf was protected. It was nice to see Wolf protecting George, or not protecting him, but backing him up, because it has felt, it has very much felt like George has just been forgotten about, and it's the amount of people that underrate George is ridiculous. It's just, to me, it's just ridiculous. He came in to a new team. I know Mercedes was on his path, but he came from Williams to Mercedes and has been, over the 3 seasons, comprehensively the better driver. I think, out of 3 seasons, people are like, oh, well, George got beaten by Hamilton in points over the season by 3 points or something. It's like, okay, so what you're saying is a 7-time world champion isn't a big competition for him then. Anyway, I don't know. I'm looking forward to George having his heyday because I think it's on the cards. He's
I'm
getting
worried
better.
for him.
Yeah, I'm worried
I
he'll
think
get
he
kicked
might.
out of Mercedes.
Not on those lines. I think I'm more worried about him turning into the next Daniel Ricciardo without the fame.
Yeah, I get what you mean. I don't know. Let's see.
Kimi Antonelli.
That's his problem, isn't it, for next year? But then Kimi has a lot
It's
to
not
learn
his
next
problem
year.
for next year. It's his problem for the year after and the year after. And more Kimi grows, and more he gets into his own, and that's
Here's
when
the
the
thing,
problem
though.
comes.
Here's the thing, though. Like, what could go in his favor next year for him at Mercedes is they'll be still kind of working Antonelli into things next year, as you said, right? So as Kimi grows. But next year you've got Ferrari, which have historically thrown championships away. So that could move out of his way. Red Bull could struggle next year. And McLaren also are, not going to back one driver
Vulnerable.
over the other and vulnerable. So like next year could be the one chance George has at a title. And if George gets that title, then
Yeah. Yeah.
that changes everything.
change.
That's yeah.
Things change. Yeah.
Once you have
We'll
a
have
title,
to make hay while
yeah.
the sun shines. Right?
yeah. So let's hope.
Talking
Let's
about
hope.
championships, by the way, McLaren is now the Constructors Champion.
Crazy.
First time since 1998.
Technically speaking, yes, they did have.
No,
they would
Constructors
have.
Champ.
Yeah, but they would have had one in 2007. But they got
I mean,
penalized.
they would have done a lot of things in
They
2007.
got
but-
penalized. What was that? $100 million. 10 million
Yeah.
of which was for the disqualification, and 90 million was for Ron Dennis being a prick.
Cunt.
Yeah,
Cunt is the
cunt.
word.
Sorry, cunt. Yeah. God, I miss Max Mosley.
Yeah.
Him and
But
his
again,
Nazi orgies.
I mean, they should have been banned overall. They should have not even been on the grid, anyways. But thanks
was
to
only for
Bernie,
Bernie Ecclestone.
Lewis and Alonso were allowed to fight in an illegal car, basically. But
Yeah.
that's for another day. 1998 is the last
It's
time they won. So
with
I actually
Hakkinen, yeah.
did a list for Sportskid of 5 things that have changed since the last time McLaren won. Vettel and Raikkonen's entire career is gone.
Yeah.
They've debuted and they've left the sport the entire career. Mercedes and Red Bull were not even a thing. They were not. Mercedes was basically with McLaren at the time, basically
Yeah.
co-owner.
It was like a
kind of thing.
works partnership type thing, yeah.
They were a co-owner as well. I think they had 40 to 50% stake something in the team.
At that
as well.
point as well, remember Mercedes and McLaren were building road cars together as well.
Yeah.
It was kind of before McLaren had built the F1, but it was before McLaren really started properly making cars. So, yeah. They
During
had
that
built
time.
one off, yeah.
Exactly. Newey was part of the team. A few other things. The point is that the landscape that was there in 1998 and right now, it's entirely different. Williams was considered a front runner at the time. It was the reigning champion.
Yeah.
Just look where they are right now. And I think the biggest thing for me is, and I feel the person does not get enough credit, it's Zak Brown. I mean, he's
Yeah,
been abused like anything this season.
And we've bashed
by-
him a lot as well, I think, in the past,
Yeah.
I know I have, anyway.
Yeah.
He
In
deserves a lot of
2017, he
credit.
took over, by the way. I mean, at the end of 2017, 2018's beginning. 2017, McLaren was 9th in the championship.
Yeah.
In 7 years, he's turned them into world champions. That is, again, people will. There is difference between how he's done it and how Christian Horner did it, because Horner also, 2005 to 2010, that's 5 to 6 years. Horner also did it in a similar time frame in terms of winning a title. But he does not get the credit. Brown does not get any credit at all.
I think this is the thing. It's because I think part of it is because he's not the team principal. And, there was a lot of questions that I saw from people on Twitter over the weekend, right? Why was Zach on the podium and not Stella, right? And I do think there is a fair side to that question, because it is Stella who has kind of led them to the championship, right? In the this last build up. But it's those kind of, like you said, 7-ish years of decisions that Zach has made. And in fairness to Zach as well, decisions that have gone wrong, that he has accepted have gone wrong, turned them around and gone back at them. And I think a lot of the reason he's on that podium is because without Zach, like, it wouldn't be Stella there anyway. Like, a lot of these people who brought this all together wouldn't be there. And I think where Zach has been criticized quite a bit is he has been kind of the sponsor hungry guy. He's been very much focused on sponsorships. But I think what people don't realize there, and I gave him a lot of grief for that as well, because at times it did feel like, okay, can you stop worrying about the sponsors and start worrying about performance on track? But I think what most of us didn't know is that company was very close to closing, and they kept it pretty quiet at points. And Zak saved McLaren. Like, there's a good chance that without Zak Brown, McLaren
70 million in debt, right?
Yeah, like McLaren wouldn't be. They had to sell their factory and lease it back. Like that's how bad things got for that team. Like there was a good chance that it wasn't going to be on the grid especially after COVID. Like there was a good chance it wasn't going to be there. So I think that is why Zak is there, because you could, like, Stella deserves a massive amount of credit, and I'm sure behind the scenes he's getting it, and I'm sure next year he'll probably be on the podium a lot more, like if things continue. But I think without Zak, it wasn't going to go there. So as much as we can make fun of Zak, and there has been some terrible decisions along the way, and some bad choices and bad things along the way, he deserved to be on the podium, because without him, not only would they not be winning this championship, there's a good chance they wouldn't be there full stop.
Yeah, exactly.
So fair dues. You have to
understand, right? Yeah, exactly. And you have to understand the fact that he came in 2017. The first call he made was, we cannot do anything with Honda anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe in the, you can say hindsight is 2020. Maybe the decision in the long term does not seem that good, because Red Bull made it work with Honda.
Mm-hmm.
But then you think about it and you see that being a Mercedes customer, he knew that the new power unit is not going to come in until 2026. Mm-hmm. So he had a 7 to 8 year period where he basically had the best power unit with him. That's
they went to Renault first, right?
For a year, yeah.
Yeah.
Within a year they moved.
I think it was Seidel that pushed for the Mercedes, though. I think.
Yeah.
But like, look, what he's done, which I think has been really good, to give him a lot of credit here for this, what he's done is he's given a lot of these people leeway, like, to run things themselves. Like, for better or for worse, he did kind of let Seidel run free with the team. It was kind of, here, I'm going to give you a lot of leeway. You tell me what you need. And I think that's one strength that we've seen from Horner in particular. Like, he's let Newey and the team kind of, this is your side. You are getting a lot of freedom. Right. And I think the one of the big decisions that they made that I thought, like, at the time was a big risk but has paid off big time was Seidel essentially had his foot out the door for 2026 anyway. Like, Seidel had been planning to go to Audi from the moment that was dreamed up. And I think the decision from Brown...
for him the problem was that he had to. And he's actually come out and talked about it even then, that he's a German and he does not want to stick to... He doesn't want to stick in UK for that long.
Yeah,
and it became tough for his family.
But my point is, he already had kind of one foot out the door.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of other team principals would have seen that, okay, well, look, Seidel has really been a big part of this, so let's just keep him until 2025. And I think clearly they sat down and had the decision of, look, if you're already one foot out the door, why not just end this now? Yeah. And they ended it at a really critical time. Like, it's paid off because Stella came in, and it turns out Stella is amazing as a team principal. And I think also, maybe, what? The thing that Stella's shuffle, though, and Seidel shuffle, probably the biggest deal it's made, is one, we've learned that Rob Marshall is basically better than Newey. I think that's clear now. I'm joking, obviously, for audio listeners who can't see me smile. And two, who it's also kind of unleashed, which is a big thing. I think I was listening to a podcast this morning. I think the race touched on it as well, but maybe not. But it's something I've been thinking about for the past few weeks. Peter Prodromou has kind of been unleashed, and this is a guy who, was a big hire from Red Bull back in the day, and
2014. 15.
Yeah, it was a big deal.
If you remember, it was basically him or Dan Fellows at the time.
Yeah, and they went for Prodromou.
They let Peter Prodromou go.
Yeah, and that was a big deal at the time, and it kind of seemed like it hasn't made a difference. And I think with Stella coming in, the new structure has allowed Peter Prodromou to kind of be unleashed. And I think you've got Prodromou, you've got Rob Marshall working in there with Stella. It's all just kind of finally gelled properly,
Yeah.
So I don't know. I think they next year they've got a couple more Red Bull hires starting. I think for they've got a strategist coming.
Strategic, yeah.
Yeah, which is probably what they really need for 2025.
Exactly.
But yeah, look, Zak Brown. There's a lot of things bad I could say about Zak Brown, and we'll probably say a lot of bad things about him next year on various
Yeah.
podcasts. But for this very moment, credit where credit's due. Like that is an amazing task of turning it around. You know,
I think for me, the biggest achievement for him has been holding on to Lando and getting rid of Daniel. Both of them. It's
another decision that a lot of other team principals would have said, let's just play it
wait
out.
the season out.
Especially when you're just off the back of literally not having enough money to survive,
Yeah.
and then you're willing to pay 20 odd million to end a relationship early and make a gamble on a rookie. It's not like you're bringing in a title winning champion. Like it's a rookie, you know.
And you have to think, I mean, that must have been some conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we're bringing Oscar,
Yeah.
and we're willing to pay 20 million extra.
Yeah.
Again, it worked out in
And
the end. but
and
that,
buying Oscar out probably as well. I'm sure there was
no,
some sort.
no, the
Oh
he
no,
was
the contract was done, wasn't it? Yeah. Sorry. Yeah.
Alpine being Alpine, even there.
Yes.
So
I forgot
yeah.
it's Alpine. Yeah. So.
yeah, and even Lando. I mean, how many times has he? I think by 20, and we all forget 2023 beginning, he was questioned so many times
Mm-hmm.
that do you see a future with this team? And he and
2023 first race, they were
Last.
last in the championship.
Yeah.
Let's put this in perspective here. Like,
Yeah.
you know,
And they were last in, I think they were last until probably the third or fourth race in Baku, where the car sort of worked for Lando and he got some points. But until that point, that car was nothing. And
No.
it has its good days and bad days. It just, at some point, you have to understand that somehow, some way, Zach was able to sell the dream to Lando because he had a seat open at Red Bull, right?
Yeah.
And even Max has come out and said that, look, whatever happens, if you want, I can get this done. I mean, he simply said that we'll move Checo out, we'll place you in here, you can come. Even then, Lando still stuck around with McLaren. Again, credit to him, but credit to Zach as well that he sold that dream, gave Lando everything he wanted, at least until then. Right now, I have a few different thoughts on that. Look, the biggest difference was this Sunday.
Yeah.
If it was not for Lando, McLaren was done. They were
That's it.
cooked.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And that counts a lot. I think that counts a lot for me because McLaren is not the full package.
No.
It's far from it. But at least it's shown that it can get the most important thing in place, which is the car. I think from there, they can build on other things. And
Yeah.
I think they'll also identify it.
Look, I think even Lando, his reaction over the last couple of races to not being in the championship anymore, and like kind of, to be fair to him, like fully backing the team to go for the constructors instead.
Yeah.
I think he's probably realized what a lot of us saw as well, which is like, look, yes, Lando made a lot of mistakes this year. Like we can go through them to no end. But when you realistically look at the title challenge for Lando this year, McLaren made more mistakes than Lando did, and McLaren lost more points for Lando than Lando did. And it's not even close. Like, it's a big margin, right?
Yeah.
But I think he's realised, you know what? At the start of 2023, we were last in the championship. And we had a sniff at a title this year, and we won the constructors this year. So it's a huge ask for everything to be right. And we've kind of aligned it a lot with Red Bull in 2009. You know, like, it was getting there, but not quite. And even in 2010, it wasn't quite there, but things came together. And I think 2025 is kind of McLaren's 2010. There's probably going to still be a lot to be desired, but there's a much better chance of a championship than 2009 because at least they'll start with a car that should be, you know, on pace. But
Yeah, I agree. So, Lando Norris, 2025 world champion. Look, one of the good things was when the race ended and there was the team radio from Lando. He said, "Congratulations to you, we've won. Next year will be my year."
Yeah.
First, what's your view on that? Where do you look? I'll set the table because I think you saw the post on X. I did one. So Lando this season, again, McLaren, the strategy and everything, it has hampered him a lot in terms of points. I think close to 94, 95. I did the calculation. 94,
It's a
95
crazy
points.
amount of points. Yeah.
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 But Lando himself, due to the bad starts and just the bad first lap overall, he's lost around 65 points. That's a big number as well. That's more than
Yep.
2 race wins. He lost the championship to, not lost the championship, but the gap between Max and Lando right now, when the season is done, it's 63 points.
So he
So if he-
lost it. Yeah.
The last 3 or 4 races, and funnily, actually, the whole thought process came up after I saw your. I think you tweeted, you messaged me during, I think, which it was Qatar race where he had a brilliant start, and you messaged me, couldn't he have done something similar in Brazil or stuff like
Yeah.
that?
Yeah.
And that's when actually he started thinking that, okay, since Brazil, there have been 3 races. Vegas, he maintained his position. In Qatar sprint, he was on pole and he just marched off. He had a decent gap. In Qatar race, he was P3 and he was challenging for P1 into the first corner, and he basically settled in P2. And again, this weekend, he started the race from pole position, converted it, and he was unchallenged in the first turn and the entire
Yep.
lap.
Yep.
This might be something similar to what happened with Rosberg in 2015, where basically once the championship was done and everything, he just reassessed the situation, worked on a few weaknesses, and he built momentum going to the next season.
Yeah.
Norris's biggest weakness this season has been the starts.
Yep.
We've seen a sample space of 4 races. Now, these are just 4 races, and maybe, arguably, the pressure was less, but still the
Yeah.
pressure was there. He didn't fumble these 4 starts. This makes him a more formidable challenger in my view, for the championship.
Yep. I also think the other thing is, right, we need to remember who his teammate is. His teammate is no slouch. Like, his teammate's a very, very, very good racing driver. And earlier this year, like, there was a period of time where a lot of those people, including Peter Windsor, how are you, have gone silent about, Piastri's going to destroy Norris next year. Nobody is saying that anymore. And I think the reason is, I kept saying, right, the thing is, Norris is still young and he's getting better. He's just not getting better as quickly as Piastri will get better, because the learning curve, obviously, is steeper. You're at different times. And what we've seen is Piastri, yes, has gotten closer to Norris and has gotten quicker and better and so on. But Norris has also been getting better. And it seems like Piastri's learning curve has started to level off. And it does seem like Norris is just the quicker driver. He's quicker over 1 lap. There's no arguing that. Like, it's not even been close this season. And to be honest, in
24.
every it's
I mean, 24.
Oh, right, yeah. So 20-4 is insane when you think about it, right? But like,
Yeah.
it's not like it's gotten closer and closer near the end of the season. And in fact, Norris has seemed to get quicker and quicker. He's gotten more and more confident in the car. So that's a big challenge for Piastri next year. But also what it speaks to is Norris is just a very, very, very quick racing driver, So here's the thing. When it comes to next year, when it comes to pure pace, I think for the entire season, Norris has always been a very quick racing driver, right? He's always been quick. And he's arguably gotten better and faster this year. And he's made some mistakes, but every time he's made a mistake, he has learned from it. And we've seen those mistakes slowly go away. Like you said, the starts are a big one. The last 3 races, he's clearly had that in his head and has spent the last 3 races focusing on making sure the starts are out, like done, right? And by Abu Dhabi, his start was perfection, gone, right? Brilliant. So he's working on those things and he is getting better. And I think what people seem to just not want to take into account, especially Max fans who just never will, this is the first year where he's had a race-winning car. Like last year he had a car that had a sniff at a win a couple of times. But let's be honest, the RB19 was there. Like, you can't argue with anyone for not beating the RB19, right? So there's that. Before that time, he never had a machine that could realistically win. In 2021, he bottled the win in Russia. Like, come on. I mean, let's be honest here.
He wasn't even supposed to be in that position, honestly.
In the first place. Yeah. So he has gone from literally in the same season getting his first win, and then fighting for a title when the odds were completely stacked against him, including his team. His team wasn't ready for a title. And you know what? The more I look back on it, I was complaining about McLaren. But I think maybe it is a case of, to give a bit more credit to Stella and Zach, maybe it's not that they didn't want to back Norris. Maybe it's just, look, guys, we're not ready for this fight yet. You know, like this isn't our fight.
I think that's the right mentality. You give too much credit to Stella. It's
not, but if you want to be pragmatic, it is the reality. Obviously, I think both of us agree you can't have that conversation in Formula One. You're supposed to be going for it at every moment, but that's probably it. The good thing is, I think that it does seem like the team and the drivers, or at least one of them anyway, Piastri does just seem to be Piastri, which is, I'm not saying a bad thing. I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I'm just saying Piastri, I think, in many ways, like Verstappen, just believes he's the best driver and he's just going to drive like he drives. And that will probably get better over time, as it has been. But I think McLaren will learn from this and come back next year better and stronger. And I think, look, I think anyone who thinks Lando won't be able to fight Verstappen for a title next year, if he has the right, like if he has a car that is alongside Verstappen's, will Verstappen win? Maybe, but will Norris challenge him over the season? Yes. Like
he'll challenge him better, right?
Yes,
because
much
now
better.
he has. I mean, it's been the first round. They've had their first
trial
round
by
now,
fire. Yeah, absolutely trial by fire.
Makes it interesting, right?
It's like Leclerc, right? If Leclerc has the right car after 2022, you know he's going to be more prepared to fight. Like absolutely more prepared to fight.
Leclerc would have won the 2022 championship if the cars were reversed.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, definitely. Yeah, without a doubt.
Just saying it out loud. And
but I'm saying
going to piss off a lot of Verstappen fans.
But I'm saying more so
that's
now.
The truth.
More so now.
Oh, that's fine. That's fine. I'm just putting it out there because a lot of people have very weird thoughts.
Yeah.
2022 championship was lost by Ferrari, not Leclerc. And if the cars were reversed, maybe not as dominant as the season that Max put together, but he would have been dominant.
Yeah.
Leclerc would have done pretty much
the last thing I just want to say to Verstappen fans as well is, like, I know they want to give a lot of, like, they want to bash Norris a lot, but you just need to keep in mind, it's like, well, one of the big talking points is like, oh, well, the moment Max had a race-winning car, he went for it and won the title, right? Like, or title-worthy car, he went for it and won the title. And Leclerc as well in 2022 was almost ready to fight for a title. I think he's a better driver now, but he was ready to fight for a title. But what both of those had that Norris didn't was both of those were in cars that were capable of winning races at various points throughout their career, right? Yeah. So, like, Leclerc had already won races going into that season. Max had already won multiple races going into that season. Yeah. Norris had never been in a car capable of winning a race in reality. Like, Sochi is one situation, right? And then you have Monza.
Yeah.
Just whatever. Like, you know, the point is, every single season that Max was in a Red Bull, that car was capable of winning races at a few races a year. Not capable of winning a title, but capable of winning races. And that prepares you differently for the situation. Norris has now had that preparation, so I think the excuses will be very, very thin next year. But he did have he has a reasonable excuse for not winning the title this year.
Yeah.
Like, more than one, like, reasonable excuses.
Exactly. I mean, I think so. I have similar thoughts on that. Again, the thing is, Max is so complete, it makes it very tough for whoever your rival is. I think the bigger problem for Norris and for McLaren, ideally, next season is going to be how they deal with Oscar. Because what if Oscar is faster? Then that changes the dynamics completely.
Mm-hmm.
But what if Oscar is... he's just nipping at the heels, so that it's a bit similar to this season, maybe slightly better. So what happens is the 24 qualifying gaps turns into a 16-8 or something more equitable. At that point, how you deal with Oscar, how you deal with the championship battle, because Red Bull is pro Max, that's it. Red Bull is Max, everything, all basically all cylinders firing, everything for him getting the maximum, whatever the car is possible, is going to provide.
Yeah, and Ferrari won't hesitate on that decision either, I don't think. That's in their DNA.
I'm just too... I don't know about Ferrari, honestly, because...
No, my point is...
For me, the problem is...
If we're five races into a... Sorry, just to kind of clarify what I mean by that is, if we're 5 races into a season and there's a title fight on and Leclerc has won 3 of them and Hamilton's won none and the other 2 say have been won by Verstappen, right? Let's just put it that way. You know that regardless of what Fred or the team wants to do, the Ferrari board will be telling them to back everything behind Leclerc.
Did they do that in 2022?
Yeah, and technically. I mean, they backed Leclerc, didn't they?
No, they didn't. Silverstone. What the fuck was going on there?
Yeah, you're right.
And that's the problem.
I suppose we blamed that on Binotto, didn't we, at the time? So, yeah.
Look, the thing is, I'll see it.
Let me take
I'll believe it with Ferrari.
Let me take my Schumacher Ferrari glasses off. I forget that Ferrari has existed between 2004 and now.
Yeah, it's you have to with Ferrari, unless and until I see it, I'm not going to believe that they're there. Unless they win the last race of the season, they've become champions. I will not believe it because that team has broken so many hearts.
So you're right. So let's just really quickly before we move on. Out of the 4 teams, you don't think Ferrari will make a decision on lead driver if they're in a title fight quickly? You're not.
No.
Okay, fair enough.
They won't.
Red Bull, we don't even need to ask. We know the answer to that because they've done it. McLaren is the one.
They won't.
I don't think they will either, and I think that's a huge issue because if they get to the same point, like if they're 5 races in, Verstappen's won 2 and Norris has won 3 and Piastri's won none, the obvious solution in that situation is just sorry Piastri, but we need to back Norris here. Like that's that. Like, and if it's reverse, same situation. If it's Piastri 3, Norris none, sorry Norris, but tough shit. Like Piastri's getting preference from now on. What about Mercedes? Because I think because it's Kimi's first year, unless if George has won 3 and Verstappen's won 2, I think they're going fully behind Russell in that situation.
Yeah.
And I think that makes sense.
I think they'll go fully behind George anyways, unless you see the first 2 races and Kimi has miraculously outqualified George. Well, if that happens, and then all bets are off, then they're basically going to take a back seat.
Mm-hmm.
But I doubt that happens. I mean, again, I'm a huge Kimi supporter, but I still would give him time to bed in. I mean, let's just be fair about the expectations from the kid.
Yeah.
Just give him time to, adjust
look, it's
to the situation.
It's going to be like Verstappen when he joined. Like the first season or 2 of Verstappen, there was mistakes and crashes that didn't need to happen, but he was a very young driver thrown into the front end of the grid very quickly. So
yeah, exactly. Just give it time. I mean, with Mercedes, it's going to be something. And I think with Kimi, I think we are going to see a bit of a scenario where he's going to have some ridiculous peaks, and then there will be races where he'll be nowhere, and then there'll be races where he'll crash.
Yeah,
and that's how he's going to learn, and that's how he's supposed to learn.
I think the good news is...
Yeah, sorry, go for it.
I was just going to say the good news is I think he's going into the right team for that, because I think Toto Wolff and Mercedes are prepared for that eventuality. Whereas if he went to like a Haas or something, they'd just kick him out after the first season. That would be that.
I agree. Yeah. I think having Toto, Chauvelin, Allison, I mean, these drivers have seen legends and they've worked with legends, so they'll know how to deal with the whole thing. Even just
Bono there dealing with things as well.
Pete will be his engineer, right?
I don't know if he'll be the engineer. He's head of race engineering or something, isn't he? Next year.
So I mean,
he got a promotion.
Yeah, so it depends.
He got a promotion, but he may still be the engineer. I have a feeling he won't be. I have a feeling he'll want out of that. But maybe we'll see.
It's a new challenge, and maybe if you have the talent of the generation, GP was race engineer to, I'm forgetting his name, Paul Di Resta, before he became ultimately when he moved, and then Daniel Kvyat. So you can see that driver makes a lot of difference. You tag along with a legend, you become a legend.
Poor Kvyat. Max took his seat and his girlfriend. Crazy.
Oh God! I mean, the kind of jokes that they've made on the poor guy.
Yeah. Okay. So,
anyways, enough of McLaren, and I mean, enough of Max
just
and everyone.
Calling it right now, though. Let's make a bizarre, because we don't know what the cars are going to be like, so this is really difficult to play. But do you think Norris will be a title contender next year?
Yeah.
So do I. Yeah. I think he'll be better.
Bigger one than what he was this season.
Yeah.
Will he win is something, let's wait on it.
That really does. It depends on him, but it very much more so depends on how McLaren are at the start of the season too.
No,
Like
it depends on
McLaren
him
is-
as well. No, it depends on him as well. How is he as a driver?
Mm-hmm.
We
No,
just
but I mean in
discount
terms of
the fact that
strategy.
Max is so brilliant that right. At the end of the day, he has to compete with Max, right?
Sure, but if you're competing with if you're Max and you're driving for McLaren, sure you'll gain extra points and potentially win the championship because you won't make the mistakes. But you also have to contend with McLaren doing Ferrari-esque strategy calls, and there's only so much you can make up for as a driver.
I
you
agree.
know,
I agree. Yeah.
like you said, if it is calculated correctly that Norris lost 63 points or 64 points and it was 63.
65 points due to starts.
Right. So if we look at it that way, does Max win the championship in that situation? Yeah. Like if he can make up the points deficit himself, yes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So,
It then depends on the team. Yeah.
Exactly.
Right. What's next?
Next
What are
up, Lewis Hamilton, final race
Christ.
done. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the favorite hour, right? Lewis Hamilton bashing hour. That's what we do. I mean, yeah, we're not going to bash. I mean, we might.
We might, but not for an hour.
Yeah.
Yeah. We'll do that soon in a special podcast.
Yeah, coming soon. Stay tuned. By the way, apparently a very cryptic message from Toto where he said that George, thanks for the support and thanks for the last minute shuffle of the parts and everything. Thanks for being supportive on those fronts. So apparently something happened there. We don't know. We'll probably not. George did not mention anything in the post-race scrum, nothing. But apparently something happened there as well. So yeah, that's
so
part
George
of
like
Mercedes being
helping
Mercedes.
out Lewis basically is what it
Who
sounds
knows?
like. Yeah.
Who knows?
But I
but
thought
yeah, still,
I thought Mercedes and George were all biased against Lewis and hated Lewis.
I mean,
That's
they
what I was
just
told.
last race, just PR. I mean, it was
Yeah.
a bit strange on how Mercedes was pushing Lewis to overtake the Mercedes driver that's going to be at Mercedes next season while Lewis is leaving the team. It was a bit weird
And
to
George
see.
didn't really fight it either. It just he didn't. No, that was definitely. They were in that eventuality. I think they were kind of planned to let it go.
I think George could have fought it. He could have just pushed him out. I mean, he was on the outside. He could have easily done that.
If George, if that was any other driver, George is being a lot harsher. So
Yeah. But last race of the season. But still, I mean, the fact that Lewis closed that much of a gap is also an indictment on
impressive
George
as well. Yeah.
I mean, George should never have let it come to that
In
point.
fairness,
anyways.
the medium tire was a lot quicker than the hard, so
agree.
that helps.
I agree.
Like a lot quicker. Yeah. And I
George
mean,
kind of got screwed.
if Lewis had qualified better, he would have breezed past him anyway. So
Yeah, would have won the race. Anyhow,
yeah.
Lewis Hamilton versus George at Mercedes. I mean, just a bit of a brief. I mean, yeah, the main head-to-head is something that you know it already. I guess they're almost head-to-head. They're almost level when it comes
On
to
points.
Race finishes.
Oh, okay.
In qualifying, George is 10 ahead. I think it's 39-29. That big a gap. But I think it's actually interesting if you look at some other key figures, right? So I made the list for it. In terms of points, it's just a 2-point difference. 2-point difference. 697 for Lewis, 695 for George.
Yeah.
Podiums, Lewis has 20, George has 14.
Okay.
Pole positions, Lewis has 1, George has 5. Race
Okay.
wins, Lewis has 2, George has 3.
Mm-hmm.
And the rest again, qualifying and races I already spoke about, the head-to-head. The one key takeaway that I feel is that when a big result is there in the offing when the car is working, Lewis tends to take the edge. The 20 podiums compared to 14, they show a bit. Of course, there are also other factors in play because, I mean, even this season we can take a look at at least three podiums that George lost due to reliability.
Yeah.
Then there have been others as well. But even then, 20 to 14 is a big difference.
We also
And
need
that
to remember
kind
that.
of shows that.
We also need to remember that, one of them has just finished a title championship coming into 2022. a 7-time world champion. The other one is getting his step up from Williams in 2022. So, of course, one is going to be more prepared to fight for podiums and wins than another one. And look, I think the thing is, like, this has been the only season, I would say, of the three where Hamilton has been notably like a worse driver, right? Like, he just hasn't been great this season, let's be honest. Like, I'm sorry, Hamilton fans, but it's just not been a very good season. And that's...
He's not in my top 10 this season.
No, and that stacks to how good Hamilton is when you think about it, because even on a bad seat, like what is probably one of his worst seasons, I'm trying to think if there has been a worse one, I'm sure.
2011.
Yeah.
2008 as well, by the way.
Yeah.
He had 7 races where he basically, out of 18, where he basically either crashed and something happened. Anyway.
Yeah, but even in like quite a bad season, he's still coming away with 2 race wins, a few podiums. Like,
Whoa, you froze or something?
No, am I back? Am I all right? Hello?
Looks like you froze.
Oh, I'm still here. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So are we back now? We good? Hello?
Testing 1, 2, 3. Are we back?
Yeah, can you hear me? Trying to reconnect. I'll just turn this off.
I can hear you now.
Hey, can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Okay.
Yeah,
cool.
weird.
I've just
I don't know what happened there.
I think my connection dropped or something. I'm not sure, but I've reconnected anyway. But yeah, so where was I? I've noted the time as well, so I can cut that little bit out. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
So, yeah. You know where you were, or should I?
Yeah. I'll just start again. Yeah. So like even in his worst season, it's still 2 race wins, one of which, realistically, he may not have gotten if it wasn't for George taking a gamble and it not paying off, and the other of which I think there's a good argument that even if George didn't DNF, he still would have won the race or could have won the race, but it probably would have been George and him on the podium, like one way or the other. So, like, still a very high level. I think, look, my takeaway from this is just, like, you can't really argue too much that George has come in to Lewis's, what it has been, regardless of what anyone wants to say, Lewis's team, right? Like, it was Lewis's team. He's come into Lewis's team, a 7-time world champion alongside him, a 7-time world champion who I think we all agree is not at his peak anymore, but it's not like he's way off it. He has been very, very good, and on his day, he has been very, very good. And George has held his own the whole way through. And there's been instances where George has been just clearly the better driver. I want to say Zandvoort was at 2023 when George made his own call onto the soft tires, for example, or maybe that was 2022. I can't remember.
2022.
Yeah, so you got that one. Like, the call in Spa this year, like to stay out. Sure, it backfired, but what a call, and like how it went on the track.
And the execution. The most important thing is the execution, right? So it's
Brazil this year, like fighting Norris, obviously the red flag didn't go in his favor either, and the strategy didn't go in his favor. But like George has been absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, exactly. It's just for me, what stands out is that I think the biggest takeaway has to be the fact that George is an elite driver. Yeah. And a lot of people on social media, they have this habit of massaging the statistics and the numbers and in a way to make one driver look better than the other. Look, the reality is that both of them are very elite drivers. Tomorrow, if you give them the best car on the grid, the championship is going to go down to the wire. And most probably it is going to be decided on the basis of who is more lucky.
Yeah.
Most of the times.
Yeah.
It's not going to be decided on... Okay, there's going to be a lot of merit involved, but I think it's going to come down to the fact that who's been more lucky. And that's just how F1 sometimes works. And I think that should be the key takeaway. I think the biggest thing is this was the litmus test that George had to pass, which sometimes drivers cannot. Because if if somehow this season we'd seen the George of 2023, where he was making a lot of mistakes, I think I think people, they kind of underrate the 2023 season, because again he made a lot of errors and something. There was a difference in his approach, because what he was doing in 2023 was he'd come from 2022 where he was a bit conservative. He was focused on getting the results, bringing the car home. That was his focus
Hmm.
in 2022. In 2023 he was just trying to get the best possible result or a freak result from the car, and that meant he was just pushing too much
Yeah.
a lot of times, and that induced errors. Singapore is the perfect example. He was just
Hmm.
too desperate, and you could
Yeah.
see it in his mannerisms and the way he was talking, that he wasn't really looking at the point standings. He was more looking at getting a win or a pole position and stuff like that. So when you take all that into consideration, maybe the season looks a bit different in
Hmm.
hindsight. But this season has been a bit more of a balance. You see a bit of both. You don't see him being a maniacally, like the approach of trying to go for a freak result. That's not really there. But there is still calculations like, I want to extend the stint.
Yeah.
I want to do something different. If he feels that he's stuck in the field and there's nothing happening, he's more than willing to try something different. I think
This
that's a
is a
very, very proactive approach.
And that's something that we like. Hamilton has had very much faith in the team all the time to just deliver the strategies, very much
Yeah.
like Leclerc. And at times that's been a problem because the strategy hasn't been right or the call hasn't been there. More so for Leclerc than Hamilton. But yeah, like look, I think the simple thing is, if this 3 seasons with Hamilton and how close George has been, and been ahead, like realistically, he has been just comfortably the better driver this season, right? Like in reality, we look at like how close they are on points and then forget that George this season should be kind of another 40 odd, at least 40 odd points up on where he was.
Yeah.
But he was DSQ'd and DNF'd, right? So like it's not close in reality in terms of things like
Yeah.
that, right? So look, George has been comfortably the better driver this year. And what we need to bear in mind is like George came into a team like where we're at now. This is George's third season. George is still young. Like, he's still kind of growing. He had 3 seasons before that at Williams. He came into Lewis's house. Lewis is leaving after 12 seasons, 8 Constructors Championships together, and 6 titles together. Like, Lewis, regardless of the situation, should have been comfortably the better driver, and he wasn't. He just wasn't.
Yeah.
Like over the course of the 3 seasons, he just wasn't. At best, they are on par in reality. That is the way to look at it. And in 2 of the 3 seasons, George was the better driver. Like 2023 was the one where George wasn't. And like you said,
Yeah.
there's lots of context around that. So one of 2 things have to be said. Either George is a top tier driver and he pushed Lewis and he's the younger driver and that's just the way it's going to go. Or George is only a good driver and Lewis is completely washed. And I think one of those is true. George is good and Lewis is washed. No,
Yeah, yeah.
I'm joking. It's the other one.
No, that is what it is. Right?
No, it's the
It's
other
just, I think, again, getting back to that point that you were discussing earlier, I just think that George is one driver who is probably, it seems, he's destined to not get the credit that he deserves. I think we might be heading in that direction, because realistically,
It could change very
realistically, if we
quickly
talk,
in Formula One, though.
it could,
could
yeah.
change.
I agree. It could. Because look, where George is right now, Lewis probably was in that position in 2012. Because again, a lot of people don't remember. There's a lot of historic revisionism that goes on. Lewis in 2012 was in a position where he was a sidekick to Vettel and Alonso. That's where he was. He was not getting the wins, results. Either one way or the other, things did not go well. He had his own incidents. Then there was the stuff that he did, like sharing the telemetry after Spa. You don't do these things, but the problem was he had the talent to match Alonso and Vettel, but the results were not being there. And right now, if you look at Russell, he has the talent to match a Norris or any of the top drivers. He does not have the results to show it. I think that is
Yeah.
something that is eating on him right now, because What, Lando has no 5 wins?
Yeah.
Russell has 3. That's a big
Yeah.
number. And you just feel that realistically, if Mercedes is in contention for the title next season, I think George will be there. I don't think Mercedes will be in contention for the title next season. I think it will be something similar to what we have this season. And once that happens, it hurts a driver like George, because I think by the end of 2025, he would realize one thing, and that is that the team, and most importantly, Toto, is being very, very protective of Kimi, and he's becoming more of a sidekick, just like he was in when Lewis was there.
Yeah.
So that's just the worry I have. And even though I think as a driver, I think he's been the better driver than Lewis in terms of the entire stint, I just think he might not get the credit for that. Because again, the whole nonsense of, because look, first of all, I think Sky Sports is the worst possible broadcast option that F1 could have chosen, but they have. The nonsense around and the mollycoddling that Lewis gets, he shouldn't.
Yeah.
There have been times when he's been unprofessional this season, and there have been times in the past as well. It's just that he does not get called out, similar to what probably Alonso or a Max would.
Yeah.
So yeah, I just feel that this kind of an achievement that you've beaten, I think this is far better than what Rosberg did against Michael. Michael was washed. Michael came into Formula One with a broken neck and regulations which he had no clue about. He had not driven Formula One cars in that manner.
Yeah.
And him losing at that point, okay, understandable. But he's beating Lewis Hamilton, who he stepped into a prime Lewis Hamilton's team. I mean, again, we can say he's washed or whatever, but he basically almost won the title against Max in 2021. So it's not like he was far off his peak.
Yeah.
He's beaten that Lewis, and that has to count for something. I just think it won't. That's when I come down to it.
I think there's a very short memory in Formula One, and I think that
Yeah.
like we talked about this probably earlier this year at the start of the season actually, and I know I definitely talked about it in podcasts like a year or two ago, where I was like, if McLaren don't pick up things quickly and Norris does stick around, for example, Norris is one of the top tier drivers, and I was saying it then, I was like, he's very, very quick. But if he doesn't start getting results soon and fighting for titles soon, that will be forgotten about very quick, because the new guys come in and the old guys who haven't achieved get forgotten about, and that could happen to Russell. The other thing is, it could turn really quickly. I mean, the thing is, like, I don't have a lot of faith in Mercedes to turn things around in these regulations. But then again, I mean, like,
You and I both.
realistically, but then again, realistically, like, McLaren did, and Ferrari have turned things around relatively quickly by the end of the season. And we are going into pretty much the same, we are going into exactly the same regulations for next year. So there is a chance that Mercedes show up with a car that, even if it's not the quickest, it is just there, and the driver can make the difference. And I think if that happens next year, Russell needs to seize that opportunity, because it could be the only chance. Like, I think a lot of fans are a bit, because of 2014, they think that 2026 will be Mercedes' year. I don't think so. I really don't. So
I think ideally I would suggest George talk to Alonso, see if the seat opens up at Aston. His contract ends with Mercedes at the end of 2025. I'd suggest move to Aston Martin, be a team's first driver rather than the second stepson. That's just the way I see it.
But realistically, what he should do is just, he needs to assess things by halfway through the season next year. I mean, if he's fighting for a title next year, fine. Fight for the title. Stick with Mercedes for 26, see what happens.
Yeah.
If Mercedes are nowhere next year, then at least see what the options are. Because if they're nowhere next year, there's a good chance they won't be anywhere either in 2026. Because realistically, the engine will be the same engine that is in the McLaren, for example.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, McLaren have a better aero team at the minute than Mercedes do. So, it's not like the old works days where you have the customer has an engine that is significantly worse than the works team. They will be on parity engine wise anyway. So it's like, who's better at aero? And at the moment, that's McLaren, 100%. So, you know, yeah, let's see. End of 2025, there's a few contracts opening up anyway, so we should see some movement.
Okay, now so that's done. Well, I think there are two things left in
What
my
else?
view.
What else is done?
I think Checo's career. That's, by
Yeah.
the way, kudos to you. That's professional segue. I mean, look, we're getting better. Dude, what the hell is Checo doing? I mean, what is he doing? Why is he putting his... Honestly, what he's done is he's putting himself in a position where he might gain a few millions from Red Bull, in a sense, but he's going to be in a position where he might become unemployable in terms of his future F1 prospects.
I see two sides to this. Look, the thing is, right, so just to explain to anyone who doesn't know what's going on, essentially Horner and
You
Checo
shouldn't
have...
drink so much if you see two sides.
Yeah. Essentially, Horner and Checo have more or less admitted
That
that they're
didn't
going
land.
to be... No, it was terrible.
Sorry.
But I should stop drinking so much, though. But I am Irish; it's part of my culture. I think the thing is, like, Horner and Checo have basically admitted that, like, they're going to be talking this week. It's kind of finally come out that, look, this is over. It's just a negotiation more than anything else. Like, it's kind of a known thing now. And essentially, Checo is refusing to just retire or just leave because he has a contract for 2 years. They're trying to come to some sort of agreement. I see your point, but at the same time, I also think he probably knows that potentially this is the end anyway, so he might as well get what he can out of it. The other thing is, like, we hear what they're saying from that side, but that's also a negotiating tactic. That is also like, I'm going to be hardball so that when we sit in the room, they don't think I'm just going to kind of give in to what they offer. You know, like, maybe it's just that. And I think F1 teams are used to that. And also the other thing I'd say is, if he's ending his career now with Red Bull, if he wants to come back to Formula One, it's going to be for 2026 anyway. There is no place to go for 2025. So
Yeah.
I think he knows that Formula One has a very short attention span. So, like, even if he's hardball with Red Bull right now, the other teams aren't going to worry about that when it comes to 2026 anyway, I don't think.
You think so?
So, yeah, I just don't think. The other thing is, like, where's he going? It's not like he's going to a top team anyway. You know, like, and
GM.
yeah, sure. And if he goes to GM, like, Americans are pretty straightforward when it comes to negotiating hard anyway, so I don't think they care.
Yeah, but Americans are not going to be negotiating, right?
Yeah, they are.
It's basically
Remember-
Graham Loudon, and he's He's a British. And
yeah, I don't know.
the team. Look, the team would be Cadillac. Would be the name would be Cadillac, but again, the team would be filled with the Europeans only, and I think that's the smart way to go about it, anyways.
Well, until they get onto the grid, remove all the branding and uncover all the Andretti branding, because it is just an Andretti Trojan horse, basically.
Apparently not, by the way. Mario Andretti is saying that there might even be a 12th team, and he might. So apparently that's a different conversation.
Yeah, different conversation.
For me, the biggest worry with Checo is right now what he's done is he's dug his heels in. He might get a good deal, but what he's kind of ensuring is that he does not come back to Formula One in any which way. Which team is he going to come back prospectively? He's not coming back to. He's not going to an Haas or a Williams or RB
He's not going to those
or
teams
Alpine.
anyway. Yeah.
Right. Then you have the bigger players. The bigger players would be Audi,
Mm-hmm.
which has two drivers. They will be in 2026 and 2027, so on. The only option for him is General Motors. But the way he's approaching, and honestly, he is very lucrative, you can say, candidate for that particular team because of that particular region. He's a big name in that particular region, right? In your region, actually.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
that way it should work for him. But the thing is, the way what he's doing right now, he's showing the side of him that's like, basically, I'm willing to go down, I'm willing to malign the name of the team just so I can get my way with it. And that does not work, honestly.
I don't know. I just don't see it that way.
He could have done it better, honestly.
Yeah, I don't know. I just don't see it that way. I think, look, he's had a hard season. He has a 2-year contract still with the team, and I think he knows that, Like, he just doesn't want to leave without a fight to it. The other thing is, it's
Yeah, but don't say it in the media, right?
Sure, yeah. I think maybe that is, going a bit too far. But then that's just who he is. Like, he's always been a kind of aggressive operator in that way, regardless. On track and off track, he's been like that.
Yeah, but as a 20-year-old, it's fine. But when you're 34, you have to have a better understanding of the business. And
sure,
but what hurts? Look, honestly, if this is how his career ends, and he does not get the farewell that he deserves, I think that would piss me off. Because Checo has been on the grid for almost a decade, more than a decade now.
More than a decade,
and he deserves a decent enough farewell at the
he
very
replaced
least.
He replaced
and he's not
Lewis
going to
Hamilton.
get any of that.
He replaced Lewis Hamilton at McLaren.
That's true.
Like, that's how long ago that was. He was like, I think a lot of people
2013.
probably. I can tell a lot of people don't watch Formula One when they talk about Checo in ways, because I'm like, yes, he deserves to be absolutely smashed for a terrible season this year. But it's also like, they're like, oh, what's he doing there and whatever. And it's kind of forget, like, you do realize at one point, like, when he was replacing Lewis Hamilton, it wasn't like he was going into a McLaren that everyone thought would be that McLaren. I think everyone assumed, like, McLaren will be back again. It's McLaren, So, like, he left.
McLaren 2012 McLaren was the fastest car. He
Yeah,
went
yeah,
to the
so, like,
fastest car.
Yeah. So no one assumed this was a bad decision. And he dropped out of the Ferrari driver academy to do that. Like, he could have been a Ferrari driver had things gone a different way. Like, this is a kind of like, Checo was a very, very good racing driver who ended up kind of like Hulk in many ways, stuck in a position where he just got kind of, put in a prison cell of the midfield. And that was that. And unfortunately, he gets his call up and goes up against a modern Schumacher and destroys all of his confidence and everything, at a team that was just always going to favour Verstappen. And that's not to bash Red Bull. That's what they should be doing. Like, absolutely.
Yeah.
But just, I don't know. Like, I think the thing is, I know where you're coming from, but I also do feel like, you can see his side of like it as well, because realistically at the moment, the only thing he would get from the team if he was nice to them is that kind of ambassador role, and I think he doesn't want that.
He doesn't get anything out of it other than a decent, respectful exit.
Yeah,
I think that should be important for someone who, whatever anyone else says, who played a big role in 2021.
Can I be honest?
He deserves that.
Sure, and you know what? The thing is though, like, the team wanted to have this conversation after Abu Dhabi, and that's annoying as well. He doesn't get a proper send off because he's not willing to retire, like, and nor should he be either. Like, he's got a contract for the next 2 seasons. Yes, he's had a terrible season, but the simple fact should probably be, and
But this can't go on, right?
We're seeing
go on.
Sure, but my point, no, it can't. And the team knows that, right? So, like,
he should know that, right? He should also know that.
The point is, why should he be good to the team when the team is basically saying, like, Checo, can you just retire so we don't have to fire you? Which is not a good position for them to put him in either. And let's not forget as well, if you're Checo, you probably have watched a recent exit that Red Bull handled quite poorly as a very, very, like, as a kind of dig of, oh, well, they don't give a shit about me either then. Like, look at the way they treated Daniel Ricciardo's exit. They didn't, like, they knew he was going to be replaced. They knew it going into the weekend.
Daniel has left the entire team and he's left all Red Bull affiliations.
Yeah, maybe
cut
that
his ties
is
completely.
Maybe Checo's looking at that and going, well, fuck them. Like, they're not going to give me...
Yeah.
Like, because realistically, if the decision is he is definitely going after Abu Dhabi, right? Which it clearly is now. Surely Checo could have said, look, I'm not going to retire. I have a 2-year contract. The team knows that. So why don't you come to me, sit down with me and tell me this is over. So at least in Abu Dhabi, he could have a proper last race. And like Will Buxton and a lot of them talked about this. And I agree. I'm like, the team agreed to extend him at the summer when they knew it wasn't going to work out. Like, they tried it, but it wasn't going to work out. The least they could have done is, after Qatar said, look, Checo, let's just deal with this this week.
I'm actually surprised that there's no performance clause or something. Because
there is.
Whatever
I'd say there
performance clause
is.
they put in, he shouldn't really be he was not clearing any of them. So
No, definitely not. So there's obviously, but the thing is, if there's not some sort of performance clause, then like it shouldn't be an argument anyway, because they should just know,
Exactly.
right? We want to get rid of you for the next 2 years, so we're going to pay you. The point is, they're trying to negotiate now, and I think Checo's probably annoyed because he's like, right, well, they want me to just retire, which I'm not going to do, and they know that, right? So like, why can't they have the decency to just like have these conversations the week before Abu Dhabi, which they easily could have. There's no reason why it has to be.
I think they have. I think they've had the conversations, and Checo has not agreed. Because
Maybe.
what it seems like is apparently because it was after Qatar, right, where Horner said that Checo knows what he needs to do. Or I mean, he's a grown man and he knows that this cannot go on. So apparently they've had the conversation. Then Christian went basically public with the whole thing.
I don't know. Look. I have a lot of time for Red Bull, and like, you know, we've talked about over and over and over again. Like Horner, I think, is just a brilliant operator. Red Bull's a brilliant operation, and so on. But if I'm honest, just after the way they handled the Daniel Ricciardo exit, it's like, yes, he deserved to go. I've no issue with that. Like, he should be gone. Like he, you know, clearly wasn't going to Red Bull. All these different things. But the way they handled that was truly terrible for a driver who has so much history with the team. You know. Yeah. So to be fair, I'm sure after Checo seeing that, he was probably just like, right, well, they're not going to give me a fucking send off anyway. You know. So what's the point?
Yeah, but it's not even about them giving a send off. It's also about the grid, right?
He has nothing to lose.
If Checo announced that he was retiring, the entire grid would get a good exit, right? Everyone would be there, and there would be something at least.
Yeah, but he doesn't plan to retire.
The grid does not get that's what I think. I think what's going to happen is next season on the grid, Checo won't be there, and everyone will just move on. And there won't even be the.
That's definitely not how he's thinking. That's not how Formula One drivers and their managers think. Like that's the obvious truth, but yeah, that's not how they think though.
Look, if he thinks that he'll be on a seat in Red Bull in 2025, I think.
Oh no, I don't think he thinks that, but I think he realizes that, or in his head he thinks that he can kick up a fuss here. They'll have to pay him out, and that'll give him, you know, it'll give him a year then to find a seat for 2026. That's his thinking.
He's 34.
Maybe it's the wrong way to go about it, but I don't know. I don't think it matters.
Yeah.
Bottas.
I think Graham Lowden, looking at the way situation is going, I think he would be in two minds when it comes to high. Because look, Andretti is going to finalize its driver lineup. One of them is going to be Colton Herta for sure. I keep calling it Andretti. It's going. Whatever. Cadillac and Andretti, whatever. One driver is going to be Colton Herta. The second driver is probably. For a long time, I thought it was going to be Checo. That was the first thought that I had. But the way he's going about things, maybe even Valtteri Bottas. They might even go with that.
No,
just
they're not going
to benchmark
Bottas.
The situation is.
They'll still take Checo. Like, what you're forgetting here is, like, Checo can kick up a fuss here, but Checo also comes with experience, the background at Red Bull, and more importantly to a lot of F1 teams, a shit ton of cash and sponsors to inject. And like, I genuinely, like, my thinking with that was that the sponsors and cash surely can't be that big of a deal anymore. But Kick is still spannered across a fucking Audi team's livery, so clearly they still care about cash.
I
know it's because of Sauber.
Because of
I know it's because of Sauber.
No, because Audi didn't want to pay anything. The reason why Audi is going to suck in 2026 is because in 23 and 24 they did not pay anything.
Sure,
but the finance. I actually saw the document where it's clearly mentioned that Binotto, he said yes only on one condition, that Audi starts loosening the purse right now. As soon as he joins, money should come in. So the all shit performances that they've had in 2022 and 2023 and mid 2024, it is entirely down to the fact that Audi was not even serious when it comes to getting out the money and helping the team.
But the point is,
that's happened in 6 months, and that's where the team is right now.
Look, Audi for Checo, I think is probably a no-go, like, realistic. And to be honest, as soon as they signed Hülkenberg, I said the one thing, which is they should go for a young driver, which they have now, which is great. They've gone for Bortoleto. But I think
Yeah.
Cadillac coming onto the grid, I think that's just got Checo written all over it. And I just don't think this attitude with Red Bull is going to make any difference. Like, I genuinely just don't think it makes a difference. I think we see drivers and teams and their management do these kind of strong arm tactics all the time. And it's probably just that,
Problem that's
okay,
going
we
to
know what to
happen is
expect.
Checo is going to get a 1-year contract, and I don't think
Sure.
Checo will take it. That's where the problem will come in. Otherwise, it was going to be a 2-year contract. Now they are not even going to risk it for one very, very simple reason, because of the kind of mess he's making right now. Because look,
Yeah, I
Checo
don't know,
leaves
man.
Red Bull, by the way, right now as a driver who's, I mean, he
may
does
just
not
not come
have
back.
that much.
Look, the other thing is, what we're not taking into account is maybe he has decided after this season, like, because beforehand he was very much saying he wants to, he has another few years in Formula One or whatever, right? Maybe he has just decided after this season that, look, no matter where I go, it's not going to be a top running team again. And if I go to Cadillac in 2026, I'm going there at 35, right? At a team that is going to be
36.
building up 36, at a team that is going to be building up for 3 or 4 years anyway. And that's not going to end well because, look, you know, it just won't. Maybe he's just decided, right, I'm going to force them into giving my cash, or we're going to end up aligning with some cash and some sort of ambassadorial role, and I'm going to fuck off to, you know, a different racing series, or I'm going to start my own racing team, or maybe he's just decided he doesn't want to be in Formula One anymore. Like, and to be fair, maybe that's it. Maybe that's it probably is the right decision as well. Like, realistically, going to
I don't
Cadillac at
think it's the right
36
decision.
isn't. I don't know.
There's nothing a Formula One driver does that pays him as much as driving. To be honest, getting 15 to 20 million is not a small thing.
Sure,
It's not chump
but
change.
I think the thing is, I think him and his family are likely to kick off businesses here and stuff as well. So there is stuff that can make him more money.
Maybe.
You know, like
Yeah,
in
maybe,
terms of
maybe.
just in like his biggest investor and a guy who's helped him through his whole life has been Carlos Slim. You know, so he's going to probably be quite closely affiliated with the Carlos Slim business. So I would not be surprised if when he leaves, you've got like a rally team or some other racing team kicks off and becomes like, you know, Checo Racing somewhere backed by Carlos Slim. Like, I would not be surprised if we start seeing that stuff. Or, to be honest with you, I'm sure there's some sort of joke candy we could make, like, you know, worst number 2 candies or something. You know.
Yeah.
The
Anyways,
new Mexican
enough of
chocolate that melts under pressure. So.
Oh God. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyways, enough of Checo. I mean, I don't know. I don't even know what to expect of the situation. It's just that I think he'll be gone and we won't even realize it. That's just what happens with Formula One drivers in general. But I just feel a bit sad that it's going to happen to Checo, who's been, and whatever he does on track, that's fine. But he's been a good driver.
If I'm honest,
this
should have ended after 2020. Like, he should have ended his career at the end of 2023. I think a lot of us saw the writing on the wall, and it was kind of like, this, you know, 2023 was a decent season for him, finished P2, but it was clear that he just wasn't going to be fighting for titles, and Verstappen was always going to be number 1, and Red Bull should have made the decision then, and he should have made the decision then. And I think now he's gotten to a situation where...
comes down to Horner and Marco. It's just... I think there's one thing
the
that
Red Bull
has sucked
roundabout's
at.
about to kick again.
Yeah. I think it's just that Red Bull, in terms of driver management, that's one thing that it has sucked in. At least since forever. They've been lugged into getting a good, decent... they've been lucky they've had a better land of Verstappen. A bit lucky I had a Ricciardo and maybe a few others, but the way they've managed the whole thing, it's been pretty pathetic in general. And it's going to be once again the whole situation. I think I think we're going to see a bit of it in the summer break, in the winter break, because even, you know, when it comes to the replacement, they're going with Liam Lawson, not Yuki Tsunoda. And look, whatever one says, Yuki has pretty much done to Liam what he did to Ricciardo. There's hardly any difference, to be honest. And he's probably done worse to Lawson. And Lawson will get the seat for only one reason, and one reason only. He's affiliated with Red Bull. Yuki's affiliated with Honda. That's the
Yeah.
only reason. Other than that,
Yeah,
nothing. And what's the point of it?
The,
Really?
the like I said, this is just going to be kicking off the Red Bull roundabout again, and hoping that they look into some junior coming up who is the next Verstappen or next Vettel. That's what they're going to hope
Yeah.
for. And because it's worked in the past, they'll do it again. I think the problem is now, the big issue they have now is they have slowed that roundabout down for just long enough where it's going to take a very long time to get back to that again if it happens. You know,
I think I won't be
so-
surprised. Next season, half year, we see Liam Lawson in Red Bull. The other half, we see Isaac Hadjar, him getting a
I
shot.
wouldn't surprise. Yeah, I would not be
That's just
surprised if I'm honest if we see that, and then in 2026 we see Piastri or someone joining the team, like an
Yeah.
outside force. I would not be
Piastri's
surprised if
contract
we
is
get.
done. Russell's contract is
2025.
done. So yeah.
Yeah, I would not be surprised if
Russell-
basically they kick this off again, and instead of learning that, look, clearly we need to just dig deep into our junior program again and really push that junior program again, they're going to just do what they have been doing, which is try 2 junior drivers. It's not going to work out quickly, and then they're going to look outside again, and in 3 years' time we're going to be in the same conversation of, well, who's going to replace Verstappen now that he's retiring or leaving or whatever,
Yeah.
you know.
Just
we'll
shit
see.
show, honestly. Just not. I think one area where Red Bull has not been efficient. It's just the driver management. It's pathetic, honestly.
And it's awful as well, because if we even just look back 3 or 4 years, Red Bull was the shining example of what a junior team should be. You know,
Yeah.
it was just, they were willing to just do trial by fire after trial by fire and go through as many juniors as possible until they found that gold, like that gold dust. And
yeah.
now that they have that gold dust, they're not willing to keep going behind them, and it's shot them in the foot. Yeah, so I don't know.
Yeah. Anyhow.
Yeah, what's
Finally,
next?
yeah, my favorite topic. So I might end up ranting a bit. I think this is something that actually most media houses. I think you've not even seen the kind of, you can say, remarks that what's the name of the guy, the Alpine team principal, Oliver Oaks.
Oliver Oaks.
The comments that he made about Ocon. So apparently he got pissed off that there was a lot of backlash in the manner in which Alpine handled the entire separation. So he came out to a French media outlet, I think it was Canal Plus,
Right.
and what he said was that, look, Ocon has not been scoring any points. He has not made any meaningful contribution to the team recently. And he's been out in, I think, getting eliminated in Q1 a lot of times. Plus, since he was moving to Haas, so it was better to get rid of any kind of, any shadow of a doubt that he might do something untoward. And this was his comment, which is
So
basically,
what's wrong with this comment? When did he say something wrong?
I thought you again got stuck.
No.
Yeah, you didn't. Okay, anyhow. I think for me the biggest problem is, look, I think just 2 races back he almost won the race for Alpine.
Yeah.
It's not even that, it's just again, this is coming from the Flavio Briatore school of racing. That's quite obvious. But just imagine if these comments were made by Ferrari, for instance. Fred
Yeah.
Vasseur gets rid of Carlos Sainz just a race before. Nothing, not even a send-off or anything. You don't do that, that's fine. But when you
How long has he been there? as
disparage
well?
a driver and minimize,
How long has he been at the team as well? Is it 2018?
5 years.
No, it's longer, right?
2015. Sorry, 2020.
Was it only 20? Oh, he was in Force India before that. Sorry. Yeah. My bad.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry.
He's done 5 years with the team. The top 4 or top 5, whatever results by Alpine, they're all his. The thing is, it was very basic courtesy that they could have done. Why they've not done it's again Flavio being Flavio, honestly.
But it's also just Ocon being Ocon, because Ocon's a terrible driver who's angry at everyone. We've covered this.
Yeah. Yeah, look, that way is fine again. My main question was, and something that actually, even I wrote an article on it. What if the same thing happened again? What if the same thing happened with Lewis at Mercedes, where Toto Wolff comes out and says, look, Lewis was not good enough. and he's not done anything recently for us and stuff like that, and he's moving to our competitor. If these were the comments that a Toto Wolff made, imagine the kind of uproar there would be in all across media.
It's just common courtesy as well not to say stuff like this when the guy's been with the team for 5 years and delivered a win for like the only win for the team, in those 5 years.
The only P2. That's the whole thing. And again, it's not even about that. It's just about there are a lot of media houses, publications F1 has, and there's all this talk about self-righteousness, doing the right thing. But all these talks happen when it's a driver who's at a very high profile, who's very popular, who brings a lot of views and stuff like that. Not when a driver who's someone like an Esteban Ocon. Even Yuki Tsunoda, I'd actually talk about in the same vein.
Yeah.
The way his candidature, the way he's been treated at Red Bull right now, it's pathetic.
Yeah.
These drivers don't get the mileage. And I think that's where I feel, at least, I don't expect fans to be fans will be fans, they're supposed to. But even media looks, a comment like this didn't even make into a discussion, or it wasn't even a part of discussion. It was just swiped aside. Yep. Same thing happens to a top driver or a famous driver. If it happens to a Lando Norris or a George Russell or Charles Leclerc, this would be a massive news.
Yeah.
That's the whole thing. That's the hypocrisy, which I tend to rub me the wrong way.
Every commentator and pundit would be talking about it over the weekend during practice sessions and stuff. It would be a big deal.
Exactly.
I think, look, two things have happened here. One, you've got like Ocon and the team have obviously butted heads ever since the decision's been made. That's been very clear. Like, there's clearly been some internal wrangling. Yeah. And two is Alpine's just not good. Actually, I don't need to go any further than that. Alpine is just not good. I was going to say not good at driver management, but when I said good, I was like, oh, that covers it, actually. I mean, to put this in perspective, this is a team that, due to poor management of drivers, went from a chance of having Alonso and Piastri as their lineup and ended up with neither of them and having to get Gasly in and buy Gasly out, by the way. This team's just not... I don't know. Like, the quicker...
It's not serious enough, right? And...
Yeah, the other thing is I kind of feel for Oliver Oakes in a way as well, and I know probably shouldn't, but I don't feel like that's him talking. That's what's been placed at his...
Yeah.
This is like...
Yeah.
And like, he's not in a position where he can fight back at the team at the minute. He kind of needs to just play the mouthpiece for a minute.
Exactly. And which is actually funny because, he comes out with this statement, and post-race in Qatar, he was questioned that will Esteban Ocon be a part of the team? And he sounded dumbfounded because apparently what had happened was, just pre-race, Ocon was told by Flavio Briatore. And Flavio did not even tell Oliver Oakes that this was happening.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the way they are operating. It's just
like you
archaic,
said,
the way...
It sounds very Flavio, doesn't it? The whole statement is just... It has Flavio written all over it, so... Yeah.
Exactly.
Which is what makes Flavio the best operator on the grid, by far.
I don't know what he's doing. Why is the team not sold already? What are they waiting for?
I think they are. I genuinely think they are. I think what's happened is, I think all the agreements have been kind of backdoor put in place, but I just think because of French laws, they have to be very, very careful about everything they do, because it is still technically a French company. Like, they've gotten rid of the engine as of 2026, but they still have the engine in the back of the car until the end of 2025. They still have Renault involved in the team, which is a semi-state owned, like half state owned company. And French worker and French company laws are some of the strictest in the world. Like, they're really, and Flavio knows this. So I think they're just being very, very, basically they're prepping the team for whatever the new owners want, but not signing anything until, it's probably, I'm sure there is a piece of paper somewhere that's like agreement in principle, signed, done, dusted, and they're just waiting for like, okay, let's just get rid of all this shit quickly, and then, and also, it wouldn't surprise me if Flavio's idea is get rid of Ocon, fucking Jack Doohan, who probably won't perform brilliantly, don't do any great performances, probably pissed off about Brazil. He's like, I want to make sure we drive this price down so that high tech and my investments are worth more when we take over. Like, would you be surprised if someone said to you, it turns out that Flavio is actually driving the price down?
Flavio is just there. No, but Flavio is
you don't think Flavio
guy,
you don't think Flavio has his hand in both sides of the pie and is playing some game here? Really?
I think that's actually a bigger possibility now. I mean, come to think
because
of,
like
I mean that's
like
Flavio, right?
Flavio,
that's
when
being the
when
shady
Benetton,
bastard that he is.
Yeah, like Flavio is quite literally a criminal when Benetton, allegedly, a criminal when Benetton put him in charge. Like, you know, he wasn't some F1 guy. He was a business guy who was doing shady business deals. Like,
and he came from that world, right? From the fashion world.
Yeah, this is quite literally who he is. So, like, when people are like, when I hear things like, oh, he's working with Renault and Luca Di Maio, I'm like, I am very, very, very sure that if there's High Tech, for example, looking to buy in, he has already spoken to High Tech and made sure that he's getting some cash out of the deal. So he's working both sides. Like, that's the type of guy he is. That you don't remove that from someone's personality. That's who he is.
Yeah, I mean, not at 95 years of age. I mean,
no. How old is he now? He's not 95, is he?
No, he's in 70s, late 70s, I think.
Yeah.
I'm assuming, but I think that would be the age. Considering he was already ancient in 1994, which was 30 years ago.
74. Like, okay, listen to this is for anyone wondering who's maybe not been around and watched Formula One and stuff as long as we have. He started his career as a restaurant manager and insurance salesman in Italy. Insurance salesman, by the way, that should tell you everything you need to know. No offense to any insurance salesmen. Briatore was convicted in Italy on several fraud charges in the 1980s, receiving 2 prison sentences. They were later extinguished by amnesty. And then he set up a number of successful Benetton franchises as a fugitive, like while he was a fugitive in the Virgin Islands and the United States before Benetton made him the manager of. So he was literally a fugitive when Benetton put him in charge of a load of Benetton work and then made him the form. Like, this is just who this guy is. So yeah, exactly. He's up to something because he always is. And that's why I love him.
That's a trip down the memory lane, honestly.
Yeah.
Wow.
I can't wait for the Flavio movie because there will be one at some point.
There has to be one.
If there's not, I will make it, and I will play
the characters
Flavio
from 1990s. Yeah. I mean, you've seen his. I mean, he has lived a colorful life. I mean, you might have seen that podcast of Rosberg, that Rosberg did with Flavio, right? Yeah. Shared a lot of things, but
I might make a documentary about him. Do you know what? Actually, that would be fun. I might do that next year. That'd be a fun crossover. Formula One and criminals. Because it's like a true crime documentary, but with Formula One.
Yeah.
Amazing.
I mean, there's a part of it. I mean, for 40 years of his life, almost, he didn't really do that. So, for half his life, he was just a fugitive.
I would bet you he would be interviewed as well. Like, he'd be happy to talk about it.
I doubt it. I
think so.
Let the deal go through first. I think he'll wait for.
No. I mean,
again,
just a documentary about his. I mean, just a documentary about his life in general. He would be happy to talk about.
That he would be.
Yeah.
That he would be. He's done a lot of these, right? You just go through. You just Google. I think just press on YouTube Flavio interview. You'll have plenty of them, and he does. I think most of them were done when he was away from Formula One, being banned and everything.
Yeah.
So he needed something to keep himself in the spotlight. But now it's a completely different thing.
Well, there's a documentary I'll be doing for next year. I think that's it, though, isn't it?
Yeah.
Is there anything else to talk about?
That's it. Sorry for the trip down the memory lane, but again, knowledge, a lot of knowledge, Flavio knowledge. I hate that bastard.
Yeah, I love him.
And on that bombshell, that's why we do the podcast together.
Yeah. Oh, on that shit! There's a safety car. We better end.
Yeah. Thanks for watching. See you next time, and drop a comment, leave a like. If you're new to the channel, please subscribe. And if you've stuck around for this long, you should subscribe.
They're gone already. Bye.
Yeah. Bye.